I am a Hmong security guard that works the night shift for a large insurance company. My tasks are what you would typically expect from someone in my field, making sure that doors are locked, monitoring security cameras, and patrolling the property. Things are pretty normal for the most part. However, there have been a few strange and frightening occurrences that I have experienced in the time that I've worked here. The encounters that I'm about to tell you are truly terrifying. The place that I work at is a large multi-story structure with 4 floors and a large parking garage for employees to use. Think of it as a corporate building filled with hundreds of people in the daytime dressed in business clothes and carrying their cups of coffee, talking about the weather and whatnot. There's a cafeteria where employees can eat and purchase food, as well as an athletic center and swimming pool for people to use. The place is great, don't get me wrong. Their benefits are very good too. But once the sun sets and the moon begins to rise, it becomes a completely different place. I was scheduled one night to perform my usual duties and ended up patrolling the 2nd floor. There are long, winding hallways with sections designated for cubicles and offices, and since there wasn't supposed to be anyone on this floor, most of the lights were turned off, except for a few in certain areas. On that night, there wasn't anything unusual, at least not immediately, and to be honest, I wasn't even thinking of anything scary. As I made my way to the cafeteria, I shined my flashlight around, checking behind walls and tables to make sure that there wasn't anybody left. Then, as I got closer to the kitchen where they served the food, I started to hear something strange. It was the noise of dishes moving around, almost as if someone or something was handling them. That's strange, I thought to myself, and proceeded to walk closer to the kitchen doors. It was around midnight at this time, and there shouldn't be anyone in the back. If there were, then at least the lights would turn on and someone would have let us know. I stepped closer to the kitchen doors and shined my flashlight through to see if there was a potential intruder inside. Nothing. It was pitch black, except for the ray of my flashlight. As I slowly illuminated the room from left to right, I heard a distinct clang of metal to the left of the kitchen. I immediately swung my light over, only to see cooking pots swaying on the shelves, almost as if something had brushed past them, except that there was nothing in sight. So with this, I got the heck out of there. No way was I going to stay and find out what it was. This isn't the movies, and I wasn't planning to die in a kitchen. What if something starts throwing kitchen knives at me? Then what? Anyways, after that, I finished making my rounds throughout the entire place and then headed down to the security office where I met with my coworker. Yeah, the kitchen can be pretty scary at nighttime, he told me. I've experienced something similar like that, but if you hear pots and pans clanging in the back, then just ignore it. Now that I'm telling you, it doesn't sound scary. I mean, pots and pans moving, that's it? But trust me, if you were in that situation where you hear nothing but the humming of the air conditioning and then suddenly see pots and pans moving without a thing in sight, then you probably get freaked out too. After my coworker told me about this, I made it an effort to be careful around the kitchen and not spend too much time there. There was a similar situation in which I was patrolling the hallways when I heard the sound of a toilet flushing and water being turned on. I followed the source of the sound to the woman's bathroom and entered through the door, making sure that my presence was known. Hello? I said out loud, pushing the door open. All the lights were off and only turned on due to the motion detector when I stepped into the room. I immediately thought that this was weird, as there should be nobody inside the bathroom. Is someone here? I asked. No response. Just to make sure, I checked all the stalls one by one, afraid that something could leap out at me the moment I opened the stall. As I pushed open the last stall, I breathed a sigh of relief. Empty. If there was a person in here, the only place they could hide was in the janitor's closet that was next to the sinks. However, that room is always locked and only the janitor should be able to access it. But just to make sure, I took out my set of keys and opened it, unaware of what was about to happen next. In the blink of an eye, the lights turned off. I immediately drew out my flashlight and turned it on, waving it throughout the room. I quickly turned to check the closet. Nothing. Just then, I heard a familiar sound that I heard earlier, the sound of the toilet flushing. It came from one of the stalls at the end, and just as I was focusing on what was happening, the door suddenly slammed. That was my sign to leave. I dashed out the door and ran back to the elevators, repeatedly pressing the button to close the door. Once the doors were shut, I was able to relax. I radioed my coworker and told him that I was coming down. He asked why, and I told him that I would explain it to him later. After I explained to him my story, he reassured me that everything was okay. He was quite understanding and said that he would go and complete the rest of the patrol, and for me to just sit tight in the office. I told him to be careful, and he left out the door, leaving me behind to monitor the cameras. The rest of the night was uneventful. My partner didn't find anything, and the two of us just filed some paperwork and waited until our shift was over. I honestly thought about quitting this job, but needed the money, so I continued to work. Little did I know that there would be more frightening events that I had the misfortune to encounter. In our building, we have a garage on the lower floor where trucks and vehicles offload items. There's a big warehouse down there where they store all sorts of things ranging from tools and office equipment, with towering shelves and workbenches lined up throughout the room. And if you haven't guessed it already, I was the unlucky soul tasked to investigate what was going on. One cold evening, my partner and I were monitoring the surveillance cameras when we noticed the motion-activated lights turning on and off by themselves. Sometimes these things can flicker due to faulty wiring, and if you wait long enough, eventually the problem will sort itself out. But for some reason, the lights kept turning on and off. I really didn't want to believe it, but it seemed as if someone or something was purposely activating them. The two of us waited for a long time, probably around 30 minutes to an hour, hoping that the problem would go away. One could say that we were being cautious and doing the opposite of horror movies. Only, with time, the problem did not go away, almost as if something was intentionally trying to get our attention. "How about we play rock, paper, scissors, and loser has to go," my partner told me. I told him no way in hell was I going to go. But after some convincing, we played against each other and I lost all three. If only I knew what awaited me in that cold, dark warehouse. I exited the elevator and stepped into the long cinder block hallway, carefully making my way to the double doors leading into the warehouse. Once I entered, the lights illuminated the room and I could see that there wasn't anything out of the ordinary. Still, I felt weird since we saw the lights turning on and off by themselves. I began sweeping the aisles and radioed my partner. "You see anything on there?" "Nope, nothing. Looks pretty clear to me," he responded. As I made my way through the lanes, an object fell from behind me. Frightened, I instantly turned around, ready to expect some sort of grudge lady or monster, only to spot a tool on the ground. There was no way that thing would have fallen off from the workbench nearby. It's just not physically possible. "Hello?" someone asked from behind me. I jolted and turned around to see a middle-aged man dressed in overalls and a jacket with our company's logo on it. "Oh my God, you scared me," I said. He chuckled. "Sorry, I didn't think there was still anybody working this late." "It's alright. What are you even doing here this late? Did you tell anyone that you were here?" I asked. "Yeah, I told my supervisor I was going to come in to prep some stuff for tomorrow since I'll be leaving early." He spoke with a deep, gravelly voice. I told him that it was okay and that next time he should get his supervisor to let us know so that we're aware of who's in the building. It was then that I heard the familiar sound of radio static and my partner's voice cutting in and out. I reached down and turned away, answering him. "Hello?" I asked. "Hello? Can you hear me now?" he responded. "Yeah, I can hear you. What's up?" "Who are you talking to?" "What do you mean? I'm talking to one of the workers," I replied. I don't see anybody on the cameras, dude." I turned around to see that the man had vanished. Reality set in and I full-on sprinted out of the warehouse, making my way to the elevator. I radioed my partner telling him that I was coming up and to have the door unlocked. After what seemed like eternity, I finally arrived at the office where my partner and I discussed the events that transpired. I don't exactly remember word for word what he said to me, but this is when he revealed what he witnessed that shook me to my core. "You weren't talking to anyone. There wasn't a single soul in that warehouse with you. I made sure of it," he stated. "I saw the double doors and nobody walked through those doors except for you. That's why I thought it was strange that you were talking to somebody. I think you were talking to a ghost." A chill ran up my spine. Who was the person that I was talking to then? He looked just like a normal human being, not your typical stereotype of a scary ghost, but instead a living, breathing human being. To confirm this, we decided to play the recording of when I entered the warehouse all the way to the end. He was right. Through the lens of the camera, I really wasn't talking to anybody. If you didn't know, you might have assumed I was crazy or something because I was gesturing and talking to somebody, but the camera showed an empty space where the worker should have been. Despite these events, I continued to work as a security. I mean, when I think about it, these encounters weren't exactly malicious, well, besides the one in the bathroom, but these ghosts or entities weren't out to harm me. It just seems that I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. For the next couple of months after the warehouse incident, my partner and I surprisingly did not experience anything unusual. Nothing weird on cameras, no encounters while patrolling, and no strange entities lurking about. Having said that, there would be one evening that would haunt our memories forever. Late into the after hours of work, a few minutes past 12 o'clock, we spotted a light emitting from a cubicle like the light from a monitor. Because we had these cubicles with tall walls, we couldn't see what was sitting at the desk. "Check this out," my coworker said. I rolled over in my chair and looked up at the screen. "Huh, that's weird. You think it'll solve itself if we leave it alone for a while?" I asked. The two of us agreed and thought it'd be best if we just let the problem sort itself out, like we usually do. And to be honest, computers don't just turn themselves on like that, and at this point, we knew it had to be some sort of paranormal event that we should not involve ourselves with. Minutes went by without the computer turning off. Our hope that the problem would sort itself out was crushed, and to avoid a high electricity bill that might come out of our very own paycheck, one of us had to do the honors of checking out the office. We agreed that since I already went last time and have had the most spooky incidents, my partner would be the one this time to patrol the area. So, he put on his jacket and readied his flashlight, exiting the office. And let me tell you, what he experienced was truly hair-raising. This is what he told me from his perspective. So, I exited the elevator, You saw me, right? The moment I stepped foot onto that floor, it felt like somebody was watching me. I walked down the long hallway and then made my way towards the area with cubicles, and as I got closer, I could hear what sounded like someone typing on a mechanical keyboard. At this point, I knew that it wasn't a person. I mean, who would be here so late? Besides, if someone was trying to finish up some last-minute project, they could work from home instead. Anyways, I slowly walked over and asked who was there, but didn't get a response. I was a few feet away when the typing suddenly stopped. It was dead silent. All you could hear was the hum from the AC. However, the monitor light was still on. The feeling of dread then started to creep up on me, and I could feel like there was something peeking out to look back. Summoning the last bit of courage I had, I walked over to the cubicle to shut off the computer, but when I got there, I was confused. You see, there wasn't even a mouse or keyboard to use, and on top of that, the monitor was blank. It was empty, like no wallpaper, no desktop, just an empty white screen. That's when you radioed me if everything was alright, and I responded that it was okay. I mean, it really wasn't okay, but I turned off the power to the monitor and then quickly made my way back to the elevator. The rest of the shift went by without any problems. We were confused as to what it was that my coworker observed, so he emailed one of the supervisors that worked in that department inquiring about that desk and if anyone was using it. He received a reply the next day that reads as follows. Hi Robert, are you sure it was that cubicle? That desk used to belong to one of our longtime techs. He has been working here for well over a decade and had just recently passed away. We cleaned out his area for a new recent hire, and there's no way the monitor could have been working as it was unplugged from the wall. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a follow-up email. So it seems that some people can't even escape work even in death. Poor guy. Working 10 years at this company and still can't get a break. Jokes aside, this really impacted my partner and his mental health, and he took off for the next couple of days. I suggested to him that if he really wanted to, we could do some Hmong shaman stuff on him to make him feel better, but he politely declined. I think he's a bit shy, but not opposed to it. Honestly, I'm surprised that I wasn't the one to get sick after all the things that I saw. I guess I'm just built different. Anyways, here's one last story that I have to share with you. But first, I have to warn you. This one is not like the others and was the closest I have ever got to brushing up with death. A few weeks had passed after that incident, and my coworker and I were doing our routine tasks when we noticed that one of the elevators kept on opening and closing by itself. It would go up from the basement all the way up to the 4th floor, then the 1st and up to the 2nd. The elevator was acting quite strange, and like usual, we just hoped that it would sort itself out. But if you already know by now, these things never turn out well. We had to call maintenance and waited for them to arrive. Within 15 minutes, I met up with the maintenance worker, a man in his 30s, and the two of us went to check out the elevator. We took the stairs to where the elevator stopped on the 2nd floor. When we got there, I noticed that the air around us had gotten colder. It wasn't the coldness of the AC, it was as if the surrounding air and inside the elevator was just abnormally colder than the overall room temperature. The maintenance worker didn't seem to mind though. He entered the elevator while I waited outside. Since there were two of us, I wasn't really scared. I radioed my partner that we're working on the elevator and that we'll be done soon when suddenly the elevator began to close on itself. In a panic, I tried to stop the doors from closing, but to no avail. I could see the maintenance worker was surprised as he frantically tried to unlock the door before it shut. Now it was just me, all alone in the dark. Hey, did you see what happened? I said over the radio.
Yeah, I saw that. I don't know where he's going though. I'll keep an eye on the cameras to see where he ends up. Just sit there in case he returns again.
My partner replied. I stood outside the elevator door, waiting to hear back from my partner. By now, unsettling thoughts started to fill in my head as I went on my phone to get my mind off of things. Now that I was alone, my imagination was getting the better of me as goosebumps started to form.
He's in the basement.
My partner radioed. Are you sure? I replied.
Yeah, I see the elevator door opening, but I don't see him getting out.
Unfortunately, we don't have cameras inside of the elevator. I know, right? We can afford all these expensive things, but cameras inside elevators don't exist in our building. Not only so, but the camera was not pointing directly into the elevator, so we can only partially see the door.
The door is remaining open though,
he mentioned. Are you sure he didn't exit on a different floor? I asked, wondering if my partner didn't catch the missing man.
No, I'm positive. I have all the cameras pulled up and I didn't see him exit anywhere else,
he responded, with a concern in his voice. Unsure of what to do, we decided that I would go down the stairs to check if he was in the elevators. I, for one, was not expecting what awaited me down in the depths of the basement. Carefully shining my flashlight, I walked through the hallway to the opposite end where the elevator was located. Once I rounded the corner, I could see a clear view of the elevator. Its lights were on, but inside it was empty. I looked around the elevator, not stepping inside just in case the doors closed on me, and I felt the familiar cold temperature start to surround me. Grabbing my radio, I informed my coworker that there was no one inside.
That's strange. I have no clue where that guy disappeared then,
he responded. Yeah, it's also eerily cold down here too. I think I'm gonna head back up and check the 2nd floor one more time in case he's there, I replied. The entire time I was down in the basement, it felt like there were dozens of eyes looking at me. I tried not to imagine shadows peeking from behind corners, but could not stop myself from being scared. It was then that my partner spoke through the radio and said this to me.
Dude, there's a black shadow standing there.
Don't mess with me like that, bro. What do you mean, a black shadow?
No, I'm being serious. It's standing at the end of the hallway opposite of where you came from,
he replied. That's it. I wasn't going to stay down here any longer and booked it back to the stairwell and sprinted to the office. The two of us discussed what happened, and eventually we decided to call the cops and notify our supervisor about the incident. The cops combed through the footage with us and agreed that it was strange how he disappeared. The only place he could have escaped to was the elevator shaft. With this information, they performed a thorough investigation and entered the enclosed space. What was discovered next, I was not prepared for. It turns out that man's body was found lodged between the shaft and the elevator. He had been crushed by its weight and the police had to pull him out. The strange thing is that no one knows how he got there. I mean, the only way for him is to have exited through the top of the elevator and somehow fell down the shaft, but many find it hard to believe. This accident, if you could call it that, sparked rumors for the next few months at the office, and people avoided the elevators for a long time. The stairwells had suddenly become a lively place always filled with employees. Even so, people stopped talking about it, and soon the elevators were being used again. This event was labeled as an accident to avoid panic among the workers, and only a handful of people knew what truly happened. And if you haven't guessed it, we were told to keep our mouths shut, otherwise we would risk being fired. Great, right? Anyways, sometimes I think that if it was me who had entered the elevator, I might have ended up just like that maintenance worker. Everything surrounding that event was just strange. The cold air, elevator moving by itself, to the shadow being entity in the basement. Because of this, our supervisor allowed me to take off the next few days to recover myself. I honestly felt sick for those next few days and had to get a string tied to help me feel better. There are plenty more stories of my experiences working as a security guard, but I think I'll save them for another day for those who are interested.